are acquainted with change management, existing change management in Acumatica, you know that currently we provide only one-tier change management. That is, we handle all the changes in one document called change order. And the project budgets, revised budgets, are calculated as the original budgeted values plus the change order values. However, there might arise a need to have two-tier change management. That is, the change management that supports two types of documents: atomic changes held in small change requests, and change orders, the bigger documents that comprise small change requests within them. A change request is also needed to allow people on the field at the construction site create some quick documents with the minimum information and save them immediately and send them for approval to their managers and to the people who are in charge of making the decisions for approving and not approving changes. And also, change requests can be considered internal change documents that are not, for instance, shown to the customer, but that will generate a bigger change order, and the revenue part of the change order will be approved with the customer, with the client, etc. So let's now move on to Acumatica interface, and let's imagine that we are into building a film construction set for some thriller called Wet Work, and we have our project set up for that set construction. We have a list of project tasks or sub-jobs, schedule of values, which are phases of my film production and my film set construction. And we have some planned revenue we are going to get for that film set construction. And we also have some planned costs, budgeted costs, and we even have already have purchased some equipment for that, and we have a project commitment. And our project has already started, and in the framework of that project we realized that we maybe have some we have omitted something in the plan, in our design, or we meet the producer or the production designer and the film director, and they say that we need to build some extra pavilions or to create some additional wall in our office pavilion, and etc. And this will result into the necessity to create some change document to reflect all the changes that are appended to our project. And to do this, we can create, well, currently in Acumatica 19R1, we can create a change order. But in 19R2, we will be able to create also smaller documents called change requests. Let me navigate to the change request form and show you how we can create a change request. So here is the change request form, and I need to specify the project we are going to change. And I will also add a description. For instance, we are modifying some wood paneled office pavilion for specific scenes. And I would also add a detailed description in case the person who will approve the document wants some additional details of who initiated, for instance, this change request, and for what movie scenes we need these changes. And we'll add some estimation lines. If you saw project quotes, the concept of estimation tab would be a bit familiar to you. So the estimation tab allows us adding all the potential budget lines in one grid, containing both the cost part, the revenue part, and the commitment part. I will add a few estimation lines. For instance, I know that I will definitely need some additional labor hours. And I will specify the quantity, for instance, 48 hours, and I have my unit cost already filled in, and I also have my price part defaulted. We will further talk about the defaults and where they originate from, but for now I will also specify the vendor for a potential commitment, and I will add another line. Let's say I want another project task here and here. And I will buy some equipment, some new nice lamps to softly light the office we're going to shoot in these scenes. I do not have some default unit cost for this lamp, so I will manually specify it. And I will also change the schedule of values for this line. And I will save my change request like that. So what is an estimation line? First of all, we specify the cost part, which is the subjob, the cost account group, the cost code, the inventory item if necessary, and the cost of this line. So this is called the cost part of the estimation line, and this, once we add our change request to a change order, will form our cost budget line. Everything else you see here, besides the vendor and create commitment checkbox, is the price part, which is the price markup, the schedule of values, revenue account group, unit price, extended price, line markup, and line amount. And also, I have the commitment part of my estimation line. This is the vendor and create commitment checkbox. You can see that all the necessary amounts have been summed up in the totals. Extended costs is the cost total, line amount is the line total, and we also have some mysterious field called markup total. This is the document markup calculated on the markup step for the whole document. So we saw the markups that are horizontal ones or applied to each line. This is price markup and line markup percent. And we have the vertical markup applied to the whole document. And for each document markup, we can also specify the project task and account group, and the markup amount is calculated in the markup total here. So the price total of the change request is calculated as the line total plus markup total. And where do all the markups originate from and the defaults originate from? The markup step is filled in based on the project we specify here. Let's take one more look at our project. And here we see that we have project-specific markups. We can add new lines here, we can delete these lines, we can modify the values here, and each project has the default markups defaulted from the project preferences. So on the project preferences form, you can specify some default markups that will flow into each new project you create in the system. And within each project, you will have an opportunity to specify project-specific markups. The same is true for each change request in particular. For instance, we can increase the value for the profit percent, we can increase the flat fee amount or decrease it, and etc. And now, once we agreed on the revenue we will get from this change request, we can send it for approval, and I am the user that has enough rights for approving this document. And now it has acquired the open status. Now I have two choices. Either I will approve both the cost and commitment part and the revenue part at the same time together in one change order, or I will need to approve the cost part before approving the price part, because approving the revenue part and the price part with the customer or client might take a lot of time. It might take, for instance, half a year to approve the revenue of the change order with the customer, whereas we would already need to have started the works and have created the commitments that are specified in the cost part of my change request. But let's now look at the simple scenario when we can afford to approve both the cost and commitment part and revenue part at the same time. To do this, I will initiate a change order, and I have already prepared some draft change order for my project. And you see that the change order not only has the revenue budget tab, cost budget tab, and commitments tab that will affect on release my project, but it also has the change request tab. And this change request tab depends on the class of the change order. Our change order classes now have the attribute called two-tier change management. Once this attribute is selected, once this checkbox is true, our change order acquires a new tab, change requests, and it allows adding change requests to it so that its revenue budget lines and cost budget lines and commitment lines are generated based on the change request lines you add here. And this change order class also allows changing both cost and commitment part and revenue part. Let me select our change request. And you might notice that we already have two change requests here. The one we have just created about wood paneled office additional wall construction, and also another one. But I will speak about the first one a bit later. So I'm adding the one we have just created. And you can see that the revenue budget lines, cost budget lines, and commitment lines have been filled in. Let me save these changes. And let's now discuss where these lines came from. Let's first of all take a look at the cost budget part of my change order. I have two lines here with the following change request total quantity and change request total amount. You can see that these fields cannot be edited. They are automatically calculated as the sum of all the change request lines that comprise this cost budget line. And let's take a look at our change request. It has acquired the closed status. It has acquired the change order number, meaning that all the lines of this change request have been added to this particular change order. And we can compare our change order cost budget lines to the change request lines it comprises. So here is the labor line and equipment line for these extended costs. And we can see that they are copied as is to this tab. You can add more change requests here, and in case the change request lines have the same complex project budget key, they will be added to these lines. As I have already mentioned, the CR total amount and quantity cannot be edited. However, you can still edit the amount and quantity manually as necessary and save these changes. And you can also add some new lines to these tabs just as usual, as you usually do to a simple change order, a one-tier change order. As for commitment lines, you can see that for each line of the change request that has create commitment checkbox set to true, the system has created a commitment line and it has copied the attributes from the cost part of the change request line. You can, instead of creating a new document, a new purchase order, you can still link this line to an existing purchase order. Oh, let me change the vendor because it seems to me that I have a change order or a purchase order for another vendor. Right. So I want to alter the existing purchase order and simply add a new line into it instead of generating a new commitment for my project. And let's also have a look at the revenue budget tab. I have three lines here. Everything is okay with the first two lines, with the line that has line amount this and this line amount that are related to pre-prod and post-prod schedule of values. Here they are. because they arrived as is from my estimation tab. And as for this line related to dev project task, this is our markups. We could have certainly split the markups for different project tasks and account groups, but for convenience, I added all of them to one line. So thus, change order tracks the markup line of the related change request. And we can also view change request details for each line on the change order to see from how this change order line was created. So this very particular line we're standing on is comprises the markup lines. And if we click on this one, for instance, we see that no markup lines are in it, but a change request line has generated this change order line. And we can release this change order as usual to finally alter our project budget. Change request does not affect the project budget directly, but it will affect the project budget only when we add it to a change order and release the change order. So the process of updating our project revised budget and revised commitments stays the same. The change order on release updates our project budget. And let me get back to the project. And you see that we have the change requests tab here, and it lists all the change requests related to our project. And you see that we have one open change request, and this change request was created on a mobile app and approved on a mobile app. And I have recorded a video of how this change request was made on a mobile app. Let's imagine that our worker met the production designer on set construction, and the production designer asked her to initiate a change request for some bathroom remodeling. And she doesn't have any details about the project budget structure or anything. She can only add a description to a change request and maybe add some files or take pictures for this change request and save it as is with the minimum details and send it for approval to someone who is in charge of approving change requests and who has more information. So we just clear hold for the document on a mobile app and save it. And once the project manager receives the notification about documents pending approval, he can also log into the system from a mobile app, for instance, and see that there is a document for approval. And there are no any estimation lines in here, and there isn't enough markup. It just has the picture and some short description of what changes are needed. And he can add the necessary estimation lines to this document and add some costs that are planned for these changes. So the mobile interface for reading these lines looks like that. Almost all the same information can be added both from the desktop and from the mobile app. And we can see that once the cost is entered, the price part is automatically calculated. We can certainly alter it as necessary, change the defaults. And the project manager decides to add even one more line for some labor hours. And the process looks just the same. And now we can take a look at the markup for our change requests to verify whether we will earn enough revenue for this change request. And once all the markup percents are corrected as necessary, we can approve this document and work with it, for instance, further on desktop Acumatica and add it to a change order. And we will do that right now. So I see that I have this open change request for my project that was created on a mobile app. And I will go to, and as I told you, let me once again open the change request. As I have already mentioned, there is another choice. Let's imagine that you need to create commitments immediately and you do not have time to wait for approval of the price part of your change order. And thus, you need to first of all approve and process your cost and commitment part. This is also possible in Acumatica. I've also created another change order. Let me change its class to an internal one. And we can take a look at this class. It is also a two-tier class, and it has only cost and commitment checkboxes here, meaning it does not alter revenue budget. And this change order does not acquire any revenue change number in the framework of our project. And I will select my change request. And my cost budget part and commitment part are already filled in. And this means, oh, sorry, I haven't specified the vendor yet. And this means that my change request has acquired the cost change order number. You see that change order number is still empty, but my cost change order number has appeared and it is filled in with the change order we have just added our change request into. And also, the cost part is already read-only. We can no longer change our cost part of the change request anyhow, since it has already been added to a cost change order. And once we release this change order, we will make the system generate the necessary commitments so that the work could already be started or the materials could already be purchased for our construction project. And we see that our change request is still in the open status, but our project already has the effect on the cost budget and on the commitments. You can see that there are budgeted change order amounts and budgeted change order quantities, and the revised values calculated as the original values plus the change order values. And we also have new commitments generated for our project. And we still haven't approved the price part of our change request. And to do that, we will need to add it to a change order that is revenue affecting. So here is a change order that is also a two-tier one, and it allows us changing the revenue budget. And I will select my change request. It is once again available in the selector because the revenue part hasn't been added to any change order yet. And you see I have my revenue lines filled in, just like we saw that for the first change request we added to another change order. And the cost budget and commitment tabs are empty. That is because we have already approved and closed our cost and commitment part of the change request. And now I have the opportunity to approve and release this change order so that my revenue part is also approved for this change request. Let's navigate to this change request and make sure that we have change order number filled in, meaning that the revenue part of this change request is approved in this particular change order. And now my project already has all the change orders approved, and these changes are reflected in the budgeted change order columns. I also want to speak about some defaults I have omitted yet. First of all, let's open the change request. And speaking about the price markup, this one arrives from the inventory item, either a non-stock item or a stock item. For instance, a non-stock item set. On the price cost information tab, you have the markup percent. And once you specify this item in the estimation line of the change request, it will acquire this markup percent. In case you have nothing specified here, you have 0 markup percent, we have thought of a default price markup, which is also specified on the project preferences form. And as for the line markup, you see here, it arrives from the cost account group. Let me open account group. For instance, let's take a look at labor account group. And it has a new tab called settings. And here you can specify the default line markup for the line or for the estimation line of the change request that will have this account group filled in. And also, you can specify the default value for the create commitment checkbox, meaning once this checkbox is selected and you specify this account group in the estimation line of a change request, you will have create commitment set to true by default. But for sure, you can manually change it here in the change request. So thus, all the defaults arrive to our change request lines.